my name's Tanith Lee, and I'm otherwise known as Mrs. Menopause, a title that I'm very proud of. So, I'm here today recording a presentation that I did for the Daisy Network, which is a charity based organisation which helps women who are going through early menopause, and that is premature ovarian insufficiency, so POI for short. So what we're going to talk about a little bit today is how to manage the menopause monsters by great munching, movement and mindset. But before we do that, some of you may not know me, and I'm just going to explain how Mrs. Menopause come about. I've been in the fitness industry for about 8 years now. I'm 41, and at the age of 38 I was diagnosed, I'm not sure if that's the right word, with an early menopause. And yeah, I was in a bit of shock, really. Not kind of what I was expecting, to be honest with you. I went through quite a lot of emotional turmoil over the whole thing. I'm blessed to have 2 children, so that wasn't a problem for me. But I suffered horrendously with mood swings, just feeling of overwhelmed and not being able to cope very well with life. That's how it affected me. I'm not to say that this happens to every woman going through these changes, but this is my story and this is what happened to me. So I started researching into the menopause. Thought, well, I know that food and movement makes me feel better, so this is going to have an impact on women who are going through, these hormonal fluctuations. So I started researching and started talking about it. And the more I talked about it, the more people wanted to know about it. And especially my Fit Pro buddies, they wanted to know more about it too. So Mrs. Menopause was born. And I just love talking about it. I want to empower women about it. Let women know there's loads we can do to make the journey easier for us. So that's how, in a brief snapshot, how Mrs. Menopause was born. So why did I say menopause monsters? Well, as I just explained, you could, I did have a very turbulent journey, and hopefully it's settling down a little bit. I've been through lots of treatments, I've tried lots of, alternative treatments and HRT, and I can talk a little bit more about that later. But monsters, because it is a monster, and it's a monster that women don't want to talk about. It has a lot of stigmatism around it because it's it's part of the aging process. Yep, we get older. Our fertile years are behind us, and that can affect some women too, especially if we're talking about the early menopause as well. So that's why I've called it the monsters. So this is kind of what we're going to cover, which all sounds a bit bland, really. So it's nutrition, exercise, mindset, and lifestyle. So what I want you to gain from this today is to know there's lots of things that you can do and you can put into action now, maybe even before you've gone into menopause, or even if you've gone through a menopause, or particularly if you've gone through an early menopause. All this stuff is relevant. All this information is going to help you alongside any other treatments that you're going to be trying. So this is the munching part. This is the part that will really make the difference. This is all about our nutrition. And there's a lot of information out there, and it can be really confusing. About low carb, high carb, so and so diets, all this information, and it adds to our stress load, because we try all these different things as women to try and get different results, and some stuff works, initially, but it doesn't seem sustainable. The way I see nutrition, really, it's about how it makes me feel now. It's about how much energy I've got, how hungry I feel, if I'm getting cravings, if I've got mental clarity. It's all those kind of things. And I find if I'm concentrating on those, the weight loss thing, or the not gaining weight, if that's your outcome that you want, is it just kind of comes with that. So the one thing that I get asked about a lot with the menopause is the whole belly fat, putting on weight, losing the waist thing. And this isn't going to be a total weight loss presentation at all, but this is something that seems to be quite relevant for a lot of women. So I will go over some ideas about how you can manage your weight, especially as we're getting older. So muffin top. The thing that women seem to see talk a lot about as they're getting older is this weight gain, and especially losing the waist and holding on more onto belly fat. Our body shape seems to change slightly, and hence why the muffin top. The first thing I want to say really is, stop dieting. Stop thinking in terms of a short-term plan, maybe weeks, maybe months, of a certain eating regime to get you to where you want to be. Because what happens when you get to that end? What happens when you get to your goal weight or your size or whatever your goal is? What happens then? Do you go back to the way you were eating before that kind of got you there in the first place? And that's why dieting, I think, has to be really, really addressed. It's a multi-billion-pound industry, and we're bombarded constantly by these quick fix ideas, whether it's shakes, pills, eating cereal twice a day, whatever it is. We're bombarded, and the agencies, the advertisers are very, very clever. They know how to hook us women into all this. So you got to kind of make a pledge about stop dieting. Diets do work when you're on them, but what happens when you stop? So promise me now, no more dieting. So let's talk a little bit of why women can gain weight at menopause. It's not a given. Just because we're getting older and just because we go through a menopause doesn't necessarily mean we have to put on weight. There's been research on this, and it shows it's not necessarily the case. So if we think about estrogen and progesterone and they really impact a woman's fat burning metabolism. So when we have those two hormones in our body, we're increasing our chance of actually burning fat as a fuel, which is what we want. Estrogen is an insulin sensitizing hormone and controls the negative impact of cortisol. And we will be talking a bit about cortisol. So estrogen actually balances the negative impact of cortisol. We want to try and keep our cortisol levels down. We do need it up in certain instances. Naturally, it will go up and down, but we're trying to keep our cortisol levels down. And progesterone works together with estrogen also in controlling the negative impact of cortisol. So you can see already those two hormones that are perhaps lessening, and the balance is moving between them, is already having an impact. So high insulin and cortisol are a bad hormonal combination for fat loss. So these two are really important things to think about. So they both mean that we store more fat when the calories are high. So if we're eating more calories and we've got a lot of insulin and cortisol, that means we're going to be storing fat as opposed to building muscle, which we'll talk about. And we'll talk about why insulin and cortisol are high as well. And also those two, they reduce the amount of fat burned when calories are low. So even if you're on a reduced diet or a reduced calorie diet, it means it reduces the amount of fat that's being burned. And your body might even use muscle instead, which is really what we want to avoid. So insulin and cortisol are culprits in the female belly fat storage. So this is why, as we're getting older, we get this kind of fat around the middle, or we can get this extra fat around the middle. And also, as we're getting older, we're kind of fighting Mother Nature. During the menopause, ovaries are producing less estrogen. And we've got 3 types of estrogen, and estrone is actually produced in our fat cells. And what happens is the body, because it wants to keep producing as much estrogen as it can, it's very clever, it actually wants to hold on to some of that fat, so we keep continuing to have that bit of estrogen. Now it's not in the amounts that was produced in the ovaries, but it's still another source of estrogen. So we're kind of fighting Mother Nature a little bit. So getting really, really skinny and really, really lean may not be the best thing. It's trying to find that balance. So we all want to know what the solution is, right? So what we've got to think about with food is about the hormonal impact rather than just calories in, calories out, because it's not that straightforward. It's not just about calories in and calories out. We've got to think about how the food we eat affects our body. So if you think about how 1,000 calories worth of broccoli will affect your body compared to 1,000 calories worth of donuts. Same calorie content, but clearly going to have a massively different impact on your body's systems and the hormones. And as we're getting older, we're far more sensitive to carbohydrates, and we're far more sensitive to stress as well in menopause. And I don't mean, I do mean that you may be actually physically, you might be sensitive to stress. The smaller things might stress you out because of the imbalances. But what I mean is, physiologically, your body is more sensitive to stress. So stresses that you had when you were younger, now your body reacts to them more by producing some of these stress hormones, which we're trying to keep balanced. So I've said there, stress and lack of sleep you could tolerate in our younger years now start to show on our waist because it's producing these high levels of cortisol and insulin as well sometimes. So this is great. So I'm going to say to you, eat more. Hurrah! So brilliant. We want to think about eating more. We don't want to think about starving our body. Because eating a purely low-calorie diet won't work long-term for us. So what we need to do is think about eating more. So these are the kind of things we want to think about eating, increasing. So lots of low-starch vegetables. So we're talking lots of the green stuff, salads and the broccolis, loads of greens, much more than you probably are eating right now. So if you can, a good big portion with every meal is going to really help you. Low sweet fruits as well. So we're talking berries and apples and pears are the ideal fruits. Things like bananas and more tropical fruits have really high sugar. And yes, it's fruit, but it's still high sugar. And remember, as we're older, we're much more sensitive to carbohydrates, and sugar is a carbohydrate. Going to think about eating a portion of protein with each meal. You don't have to have a steak with each meal. It doesn't have to be a massive amount of protein. But generally, women, we're pretty poor at eating enough protein. We need to keep hydrated, and we're going to be thinking about minimising stimulants. And that's not really under the eat more. That mum just must have slipped in there. So we've got to think about adding nutrient loading our body. So by having all these lovely vegetables, we're giving our bodies, our cells, all the nutrients that it needs to keep it moving and functioning optimally. That's what we're looking for. And the more we eat that kind of stuff, automatically, without even really taking anything away from our diets, our cravings will be reduced because our body's actually giving you the signals that it's actually getting what it needs. So yes, there is some eat less stuff as well. So we kind of know, don't we, what we should be eating less of. But we kind of get, especially if we're tired and stuff, we get wrapped up in, poor habits and craving sugars and stuff, quick fix energy. Our body is designed to say, I need energy and I want it now. And that's the stuff that's high sugar. We get that energy really quick. So we're trying to think about reducing our refined sugars, cakes, pastries, high sugar fruits, all that kind of stuff. Because these foods have a potential insulin promoting action, which is going to, when we eat high sugar foods, we're going to produce more insulin, because what happens is the insulin sent out to take the excess sugars out of your blood system. Because when we have excess sugars, they can cause problems in the body, and what else they can cause is fat storage. Our body doesn't know what to do with these excesses, so it will store it as fat. Now, there's also a lot of foods out there that are regarded as healthy that we need to just be aware of. Whole grain breads, fruits, dairy foods, and starchy vegetables. I mean, starchy vegetables like your potatoes, parsnips, that kind of thing, peas, sweet corn. I'm not saying don't eat any of these foods, because as soon as we say don't have something, we go into deprive mode and we want more of it. It's just about looking at the balance of your plate, looking at the balance of your nutrition and trying to eat less of it. Once you start to feel better, because you're adding much more vegetables and much more healthy lean protein and you're keeping hydrated, you're going to automatically want to eat less of this stuff, which is great because your body, you kind of do it naturally. It doesn't feel like it's been put upon you. You've got to think about how all this makes us feel as well. You've got to think about your energy levels and your sleep and libido, and all this, it all has a massive impact. So we're talking about eating for mood and well-being. So it's not just about your weight loss, even though we've just talked about that. This stuff is the stuff that we need to help rebalance our hormones and eating, so it makes us feel better. So you probably have heard maybe about the phytoestrogens that we have in foods. Very low level estrogen type properties in these foods, which can help keep us nice and balanced. So I've listed there's the different types of foods you can eat which have these phytoestrogens. So it's a really good idea, again, to have a good mixture of all these types of foods within your diet. So I've said at the bottom there, soya, linseeds and red clover are the richest sources of phytoestrogens. Now, soya is a very over-processed, highly insecticided, I don't think that's the right word, food product in the world. So if you're gonna, and it also can have a damaging effect hormonally. So there's only soya products I would eat would be the ones that are fermented. So it's like a miso or a tempeh, that kind of thing. Miso is a paste that you can put into soups and stuff. So I'd really recommend that, and not having loads of soya yogurt and milk, because they're full of rubbish. So you may have heard the term eating clean. It's a term that is used more and more. And what do we mean by that? So that's what I was talking about earlier, adding in all those vegetables, lean proteins, reducing your dairy content, reducing your caffeine, keeping hydrated, lots of herbal teas, lots of, green tea is great to add in. And this is what we talk about eating clean. So just trying to eat as a human being we're meant to eat, stepping away from so much of the processed stuff, eating meals that are made from scratch. So, we think about reducing the caffeine. It's a massive stimulant. It really taxes our adrenal glands, which are already working overtime in menopause to help with some of the other hormones going on. Remember, you can get your calcium from leafy green vegetables. Doesn't all have to come from dairy. I would recommend reducing dairy as well. Think about your fibres. So, insoluble fibre, preventing cancer. So, you've got your grains, fruits and veg. And then we want your soluble fibre to help keep your blood sugar levels balanced, which is really important for your insulin levels. So we want to avoid anything that shoots up your blood sugar levels, things that are high sugar, high glycemic load in them. That would be things like the bananas and potatoes, all that kind of stuff. Trying to keep our blood sugar levels nice and level. So generally in the Western world we're overfed and undernourished. So too much food but actually not enough nutrients. Unfortunately, the over farming and the processes, our soil really isn't what it used to be. So our food, even organic, really doesn't have the type and the amount of nutrients we want. So we really got to try and pack in as much as you can, and I would recommend supplementation, but we'll talk about that later. Digestion. This is another problem that sometimes happens with menopause. Again, it's all down to the fluctuating and changing hormones in the body. So changing hormones can affect our digestion. I'm not particularly totally 100% sure of dynamics and why it happens, but I just know it's something that I hear a lot that happens as we're getting older. I think it's to do with how much acid we have in the stomach for digestion and the hormonal disruptions. So good digestion, we need a good digestion. One, we need good digestion to absorb nutrients. So you could have the best diet in the world, but if you've got really poor digestion, your body's not actually going to get those nutrients it needs out of the body, or out of your food rather. It's not going to get it out of your food. So it's really important to keep a good digestion. It also, if we keep things moving, so good bowel movements as well, it's going to clear toxins and excess hormones, which sounds mad, excess hormones, but we don't actually want too many excess hormones in our body. We want to be able to excrete them, and we do that via the bowels. So keep hydrated, eat fibre. You don't want to be eating too much fibre. You don't need to put loads of bran and stuff on your food. Just keep going with the vegetables. Probiotics are brilliant for gut health, and movement. As human beings, we are designed to move. Our bodies love to move. And we'll talk more about the movement later, but it really helps with keeping everything regular, keeping everything moving. Also, another thing about digestion is you may have heard of serotonin. It's kind of like your feel-good hormone. And actually, all your serotonin is made in your gut. So those hormones are actually made in your gut. So it's really important to keep your gut super healthy and working well. Stress also affects our gut health. When we're stressed, we're in that fight or flight mode. What happens is the blood is taken away from things like your limbs and taken away from your gut, and it's sent straight up to your brain, because that's where we need all the blood and nutrients in your brain, because we're in survival mode. What happens then is that your body's digestive system becomes slow and sluggish. The stress really impacts digestion. We're all very familiar, aren't we, with the butterflies, and if you're nervous about something, how that can affect the bowels. You've got to think about that direct link and why that happens. Also, what's really good for digestion, and I've had great success with this, and it helps your body get more nutrients, is to use digestive enzymes. So you take these in a supplement form with your meals, and they actually, these enzymes are naturally found in certain foods, or in most foods, but what we're doing is adding more in to give your body the better chance to break down and digest all those foods. So, guess what we're going to talk about next? Sometimes this is the reaction the next topic has on people, and we're talking about, obviously, women today. So this is when we're talking about movement. So I like to move it. As I said earlier, human beings, we're designed to move. We're designed to move around and create energy and get everything moving. It makes us feel good. So here are some brilliant reasons why we should be moving. So it raises your metabolic levels, which burns more fat. Check. Increase muscle mass equals a sexy body shape, thinking about our silhouette. It suppresses our appetite, so we get a bit of a reduction in weight. Increases collagen, fantastic, brilliant for your skin. You've heard of endorphins. Exercise makes you feel good. It raises those endorphins. I've been talking a lot about insulin, so it actually makes your body more insulin sensitive, so it actually helps you keep those blood sugar levels lovely and balanced, which is going to help with your moods, and it's going to help with your balancing your weight as well. It really helps with sleep, which improves your mood. We all know how broken sleep, especially if you're suffering from night sweats and stuff, can really affect your well-being. It's a great stress buster. Again, looking at ways to reduce stress. Stress impacts us, especially in menopause, so much. So, I'm going to talk about stress as well later. Hell, it improves your sex life, which is brilliant. You know, as we're getting older, there's this fallacy that our libido goes, and yes, the hormonal disruptions that can make us less, make our libido less, and it can make our genitals less sensitive, but that can all be rebalanced with all the stuff we've talked about. There are other ways as well. You know, as human beings, we're meant and designed, especially as women, to enjoy a good sex life. So please don't write yourself off. You know, I think menopause is going to write off your sex life. Oh no. So movement. You've got to decide what the best type is for you. So we're talking about exercise. How do you want to feel? What do you enjoy? And what are the results you want? Because depending on what the outcome is you want, it's going to depend on the type of exercise you should be doing. You should. Negative language. You can be doing. So here are some of the goals that some people have. Obviously, bone health, very important for us as we're getting older, and especially for menopausal women. Fat loss, flexibility, stress reduction, strength. Maybe you want to change your body shape. Maybe you want to feel fitter. Maybe you like the social aspect. These are all things to take into consideration when you're thinking about maybe starting a new exercise regime. So, let's talk about the first one. Exercising for weight loss. Now, the thing with exercise is great for weight loss, but only when paired up with a great nutrition plan as well. The two alone, I mean, exercise alone with not a great nutrition plan, yeah, you might get okay results. Nutrition alone, yeah, you'll get better results, but it'll be increased by exercising. So let's just talk about the different types of exercise. So cortisol is actually produced during intense exercise and long duration. So long duration is things like jogging, aerobics, that kind of thing. And high intensity is things like high intensity interval training or quite heavy weight training. So cortisol is actually produced during these intense exercise, which kind of goes against what we were saying earlier about how we want to reduce our cortisol levels. But if in these intense exercise sessions it's short, it also raises growth promoting hormones like human growth hormone and testosterone. These sound quite masculine, but we actually want these. These are hormones that will help us burn more fat and build muscle. When I say build muscle, I don't mean getting big like a bodybuilder. It's very hard for females to get that look. What it will do is will keep your body, for a word that I hear a lot, is toned. It will keep your body shape toned and really, really nice kind of shape to it. So these hormones actually work with cortisol to burn fat and build, or at least maintain muscle. As we're getting older, if we're not exercising, we are losing muscle year on year. And the less muscle we have on our frames, the lower our metabolism. And you can see how that affects weight gain. So we're looking at maintaining or trying to build up muscle. So what we're saying here is the best thing for weight loss is high intensity exercise, but for shorter durations. So you kind of want it less than 45, 30 minutes would be the best thing. And if you could follow that up with a nice calming workout, like a walk or some yoga to bring your cortisol levels down even more, that would be the perfect combination. So long duration exercise has a different hormonal impact, and it raises cortisol but without the balancing action of the growth hormones. So what it's going to do, things like long distance running, cycling, that kind of thing, is actually going to raise your cortisol levels. Thing is, if this is your bag and this is what you really enjoy doing and you actually find some stress relief in this, you can do it, but I would suggest balancing it with something else more calming. Pilates, yoga, gentle walking would be a really good way to balance it. So raising cortisol during menopause can frequently cause more issues than it solves for weight gain. So you've got to think about that. It's all about trying to get this balance right. So shorter, intense exercise is probably more beneficial compared to long duration, moderate, intense exercise. So if your outcome is weight loss, think about mixing it up a little bit. I'm not saying get rid of your runs, but I would probably say maybe changing one of your runs a week for a shorter, more intense workout. Give it a go. Give it a try. See how your body responds. We're all different. So this is just a bit of a recap. So weight loss, you need to go with a shorter, higher intensity exercise. Lifting weights is brilliant. You could do a 30-minute, quite heavy weight training session and you'd get fantastic results. Do not be scared as women to go and pick up some weights. I would go and see a trainer, go to a gym. You'll get great results. You could use your body weight as well. If it's not for you, don't worry. There's other stuff you can do as well. So if your goal is stress reduction, which again is reducing cortisol, which we've heard all the effects of how stress affect our body, then leisure walking is really good for that, as is the yoga and Pilates. If your goal is flexibility and getting stronger in your core, yoga and Pilates are really good for that. And if it's just general fitness you just want to feel fitter, you want to get your cardiovascular system fitter, there's loads you can do. It's the cardio type stuff. You dance, swimming, sports, jogging, aerobics. So I think you just need to be really clear on what your outcome is. Or what your outcome is, what the outcome that you want is. Try different things. Get out there. Try different classes. Find something. If you really don't like the gym, don't go to the gym. You've got to find something we enjoy. We've got to find something we engage with to keep us going. We want to find something that we actually look forward to doing. If it's something you feel like, oh, I've got to do that, then you know what? It's not going to work for you. Yes, we all have days when we feel like that. And the hardest bit sometimes is actually getting off the sofa. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I don't fancy training or do anything, I just think, oh, you know what, I'll just do it for 5 minutes. Because the hardest bit sometimes is getting going. So give that a go. So I have touched on stress. Now for me, with anybody that I work with, this would be the first thing I would tackle. Generally, in the way we live these days, in our modern environment, we are bombarded with different stresses. So it could be from a poor diet, it could be the way we talk about ourselves, negative thinking, talking down to ourselves, that negative self-chatter. It could be the environment we live in. There's lots of environmental stresses, from chemicals to all sorts of stuff. It could be people that we're surrounded with, and we could be getting stress from work. There are other things in there as well. There could be looking after older parents. There could be looking after kids. There could be all sorts of stresses. And if you've got to think about, we're being bombarded by all these different stresses. And when I work with women that are really busy, really stressed out in that kind of, if you want to use that term, if I come in and say, okay, let's change your nutrition plan, do this, and let's get you on a new exercise plan, those things generally would just push the woman a little bit over the edge, because it's just adding too much onto an already busy lifestyle. So we've got to think about these stresses. And when we're stressed out, think about, we could be in this high cortisol levels for most of the time, and look what it can do to our body. All these things that high cortisol can affect. This is why I would always deal with stress first before I even tackled any other kind of changes. I would look at stress, what we could do to reduce stress, to get our bodies more in harmony, time for ourselves. So, how do we reduce stress? How do we reduce our cortisol levels? So cortisol can be controlled and lowered nicely by relaxing activities, which is nice. We all like to chill out, but most of us don't do enough of it if we're really, really busy. Typical women, not putting ourselves first as well. The family comes first, everything else comes first. We go down further down the list, and then we get stressed out. Our hormones go out of whack. Our mood swings go everywhere. Our moods are up and down. Well, we turn to foods to make us feel better in the short term, and that's a cycle I see over and over again. So, how can we reduce cortisol? Leisure walking, and this isn't power walking, this is walking. If you can, outside as well. If you're lucky enough to live somewhere, you can go out, get the fresh air, get everything moving, get some oxygen in our bodies. Practice deep breathing. Just feel how good that feels. Restorative yoga is good. So gentle yoga, not power yoga, because that's going to be too intense. Tai Chi, sex. The thing with sex is, the more you don't have it, the more you don't want it. And it's almost like you've got to fake it to make it. And by that, I don't mean, faking orgasms. I mean, just give it a go. Give it a try. Just remember, as we're getting older, if you're menopausal, you might need some lubrication to help with sensitivity, because vaginal dryness is a problem. It can be a problem. Not all women get it. For women as they're getting older, so use a lubricant, and also it's a good time to kind of get much more into, much more kind of into foreplay and spending time with your loved one as well, to help with the sex. Our biggest sex organs in our brain. It's our brain. So I would probably, if you're not read it, read 50 Shades of Grey or something. That really helps some women, is to read some more sexier books and actually start thinking, and that will start to make the switch for you. There is other stuff you can do, which I may talk about later. Also, reducing cortisol, massage, sauna. Oh, I'm sure you can think of other things. It might be going for reflexology, any of that kind of stuff. Really, really try and put that in. I would make that your top priority before you tackle anything else. Okay, so progesterone is derived from the ovaries and can be used to increase cortisol production. So actually, if you're really stressed out, cortisol needs to be produced. And it's going to be produced from your progesterone. So progesterone can be used to make cortisol in the adrenal glands. So it actually steals it. It's called the progesterone steal. The adrenal glands steal or use up progesterone to make hormone cortisol. Another big reason, guys, why we need to reduce stress and stress hormones. We need all of the progesterone and estrogen we've got going on in our bodies. We need to nurture it and keep hold of that to try and keep our hormones balanced, because of everything I said at the beginning. Because these, not only do these affect your moods and well-being, they affect, our symptoms, menopausal symptoms. So, talking about managing stress, you can see how important I think this is, right? So we're trying to fix the cause and not the symptom. So it's not about getting stressed out, having a glass of wine and feeling better. That's not going to help anyone. It's talking about managing stress. And, I put on Facebook the other day, how do you guys deal with stress? And these are some of the ideas they come up with. These sound great, don't they? Walks, quiet time, deload the diary, me time, hobbies, meditation, that's big on my list. Exercise, sleep, rest, breathing. We need to practice breathing. That action of just deep breathing instantly relaxes you. Got here the usual thing: bath and massage, reflexology, hugs. Hugs are great, releases oxytocin, very calming. Music, laughter, sex, brilliant, very good for managing stress. talking to friends, go to a spa, use visualizations. All this kind of stuff are really good to use. Now, I'm not saying you have to use all of these, but maybe you could try one or two. Sleep is another important factor as well into feeling great, and also helps with weight loss as well. There's lots of studies out there that show that if you don't sleep well, you don't lose weight, or you may even gain weight. So if you're suffering with night sweats, it's there is stuff you can do. All the stuff we've spoken about will help with night sweats, without doubt, absolutely. But they do interrupt your sleep, and I know sleep deprivation is a big problem in menopausal women. So think about reducing all your toxins. Think about this clean eating is going to really help with reducing toxins to help liver. It's going to help your body rest more at night, because your liver's going to be if it's overworked working on the toxins, then it can't do what it's meant to do. So I'm going to say also no caffeine after 12 o'clock as well, because it's a stimulant and it's going to keep you awake at night. You may go off to sleep then, but then you may wake up and find it harder to go off. So talking about no alcohol either, or much reduced alcohol. Alcohol really affects sweats and hot flushes. Again, it's a toxin. So reducing alcohol if you can, and get into a really good bedtime routine. These teas are really good. They can help with sleep. So it's just really finding something that works for you, getting back into a good sleeping habit. So supplements. Supplements are there to supplement or add to an already good diet. We can't expect to eat rubbish diet, take a multivitamin and think it's going to do anything. You know, you've got to think about your digestion as well. There's no point having a poor digestion. You will not take in, you can take all the supplements in the world and your body won't actually use them. You just end up the expensive wee. So with supplements, it's a minefield out there, and I would always say speak to an expert. See a nutritionist, see a herbalist, don't guess. Some of this stuff is really powerful, and I wouldn't ever self-prescribe. These are the ones that are, I think, really good ones for menopausal women to take. Vitamin D, because of the poor summers we've been having in the UK, our vitamin D levels are very low. We've got cases of children getting rickets, which is just mad. So take vitamin D. It's good for your bones. It's really good for your immune system, good for your mood, and it's also good at managing your insulin levels. Vitamin D is brilliant. You can get it in a spray form, nice and easy. Fish oils, they can help with serotonin levels. It can help with the PMS type symptoms. It can help with all sorts of bodily functions, which sounds a bit weird. So fish oils, I would also take magnesium. Stress uses up a lot of magnesium. You can get magnesium from stuff like kale and cabbage as well. Really good for your bones, very good for relaxation. You could find a menopause supplement. There's some good menopause specific supplements out there. Some women get on really well with those. Very important to get your B vitamins in. So this is really good for energy. It's really good for your adrenal glands, as is vitamin C. And it also helps your body to deal with some of these synthetic hormones. Okay, so we've got vitamin C. Again, very, very important for your adrenal glands. We want to look after our adrenal glands. They're working super hard dealing with stress and dealing with our hormones. And also ginseng's always been good as well. It's an adaptogenic. It'll adapt to whatever your body needs. Very good for stress, very good at rebalancing. Licorice tea, good for your adrenal support. Again, adaptogenic, good for balancing hormones. Maca, something I use, it's a root, it's a powder. I use that in shakes and stuff, and that's been shown to be really good for libido and good for menopausal women. I have noticed that I do feel better on it, and it all has really helped my libido as well. Worth having a look at. But again, guys, I would always recommend maybe go and get some advice for all of this kind of stuff. We've got to think about food as well, about how it really does affect how we think. So there are receptors for estrogen all over the body, including in the brain. So lower estrogen, as it occurs at menopause and in your periods, your menses, can impact mood and cravings. So have you ever noticed why you get food cravings, maybe at certain times of the month? So low estrogen states that can especially impact dopamine. We want dopamine because it's the brain's #1 motivating neurochemical, and serotonin, which we spoke about, which is a relaxating and a well-being chemical as well. Estrogen also impacts GABA, another relaxation chemical. And what I found with, and I use this, things like using cocoa powder during low estrogen states can raise dopamine and serotonin. We've found this helps with mood and cravings around the time of the period. I use cocoa powder like you would make an instant cup of coffee. So I make it in a mug, and I mix it with some water, and I add a little bit of almond milk, and I top it up with hot water. I also put cinnamon in it. Sometimes I put coconut oil in it. All sorts of stuff, and it just some of turmeric and stuff is really good as well, and it's a really good drink. Nails those cravings, and makes me feel good. Also, we've got here that there's some bedtime tea. It's because it raises GABA levels as well, and this helps the mood. I got this information from Metabolic Effect, who I follow closely. They have really good information, and especially talk a lot about hormones and the brain's neurotransmitters and chemicals. So this is where I've got all this from. So emotional well-being, just want to touch on this a little bit. It's good to talk. If you're going through menopause, or if you're going perimenopause symptoms and things are starting to change, talk to people. There's plenty out there of people who want to talk. It might be friends or a partner, or it might be professionals. Seek someone out. Support groups as well. Be aware of your triggers. Be aware of the things that set you off, whether it's tiredness. For me, it's being tired. This when I'm much more sensitive to stress. That's when I'm more likely to eat foods that aren't going to do my body much good. And be kind to yourself. Give ourselves a hard time. So let's just be kind to ourselves. Start to talk better to yourself. So is the first step the hardest? I don't think so. I actually think the first steps actually are the easiest, because that's when we're usually full of enthusiasm and motivation and ready to go. And then I think actually the hardest thing is actually to keep going. So set yourself small goals. Really break it down. Don't add to your stress levels by rapidly changing everything around you. Find Big Mo. Now, Big Mo was introduced to me by The Compound Effect, a book by Darren Harding. And it's all about momentum. It's keeping going. And he talks about, he explains it like a kid's merry-go-round. So if you can imagine when you're a kid, you've got this merry-go-round, you've got your friends on it, and you've got to push to keep it going. And when you first start, it's quite hard to push. But once you get pushing, it gets easier and easier. And before you know it, you can jump on and keep going. But then it starts to slow down. So what do? You just hop off, give it a little bit of a push, jump back on, and again, you're going and going. But what happens if you jump off and you let it stop? Okay, you have to start again. So instead of using that force, and it'll be much harder to push again, to start again. And this is the analogy he uses for using momentum. Just it's easier to actually keep going than to keep stopping and starting and stopping and starting. So I would choose 1-2 things maximum to change, small things, and try that for a couple of weeks. So it may be, the first thing I would always give would be to maybe add in a bit of space in your day that you can just take time for you, or even in your week. So that's stress reduction. and just try that one thing consistently for a couple of weeks and just kind of get into the groove with that. And if you feel ready to, you can add something else in, and that will have really good impact. So a little bit of a summary. Things we've got to think about: fixing the big rocks, the big things. Don't worry about the small stuff, little bits and pieces. I would go stress, tackle that first. That will lead in hopefully to you sleeping better. Brilliant. Those two things alone would have a massive impact on your health and well-being. Then you can start thinking maybe about nutrition. So look at what you're eating and think of the hormonal impacts, and just pick a small goal and just practice it. Consistency is the key. Just do something small and keep doing it, because that makes you feel good, right? It's going to make you feel good that you can do something and you're going to carry on doing it, rather than doing something too big, then after a week thinking, oh, I can't do this, and giving up. So I'll put this up here really because I've just put reaching out is in and suffering and silence is out. Talk to people. Don't keep it all bottled up inside. So that's me actually at the moment, and I can't answer your questions right now, but you can come over to Mrs. Menopause, my blog, www.mrsmenopause.co.uk, and you can find me at Tanith, Tanith, at tanithlee.co.uk. You can email me, because I'm going to be doing some more presentations in the future, things about HRT and sex and all the other questions people talk about. So this has just been an overview. I hope you found it really interesting. Maybe you've got at least one or two takeaway points that you can use. I'd love to let me know how you're getting on. And I hope to speak to you soon, guys. Thanks.